The sirens wailed with a piercing urgency that reverberated through the walls of the Martian quarantine facility, their shrill cries echoing in the thin, alien air. Dr. Lena Park's heart pounded in rhythm with the alarms as she sprinted down the corridor, her breath misting in the chill that seeped through every seam of the hastily erected compound. Her data tablet flickered, displaying a cascade of red alerts, each one more dire than the last. "They've breached the perimeter." A voice crackled over the comms, laced with static and panic. "All personnel to defensive positions immediately." Lena skidded around a corner, nearly colliding with a group of armed security officers rushing in the opposite direction. The lead officer, a grizzled man with a scar slashing across his cheek, grabbed her arm as they passed. "Dr. Park, get to the control room. We need you to initiate the lockdown sequence now," he barked, urgency dripping from every word before he released her and continued his charge. Her mind raced, cataloging procedures and protocols. The facility's safeguards were state-of-the-art, designed to contain any breach within minutes, yet the screens flashing in her peripheral vision suggested a systematic failure. Something, or someone, was overriding their systems, and the implications made her stomach lurch. The control room was a hive of activity when she burst through the door, technicians manning consoles that blinked and buzzed under their frantic fingers. On the main screen, a map of the facility showed red spreading like a stain from the western quadrant, her laboratory. The same lab where only hours ago, she had been cataloging the latest batch of human clones, meant to be the Martian colony's future workforce, and perhaps its salvation. "Dr. Park," shouted Commander Alex Rourke from the center of the room, his presence commanding amidst the chaos. "We're losing containment, and external comms are down. We can't reach Earth Command." Lena's throat tightened. "Have you initiated Protocol Omega?" Rourke's grim expression was all the answer she needed. Protocol Omega was their last resort, a failsafe that would destroy the facility to prevent the clones, or anything else, from escaping into the Martian ecosystem. The fact that it was even being considered spoke volumes about the severity of the situation. "What's the status on the incursion?" she asked, moving to a console to input her credentials. Her fingers danced over the keys, bypassing security locks with practiced ease. "Unknown hostiles," Rourke replied tersely. "They came out of nowhere, and their tech, it's like nothing we've seen before. They're targeting the labs specifically." Lena's stomach dropped. Whoever they were, they knew exactly what they were after. The clones, her life's work, now a potential weapon in the wrong hands. The screen in front of her blazed with data as she pulled up the lockdown sequence. The system shuddered under her commands, a mechanical groan echoing through the facility as blast doors began to slide shut, compartmentalizing the complex into isolated sections. "Lockdown initiated," she announced, the words barely leaving her mouth before an explosion rocked the building, throwing her against the console. Pain lanced through her shoulder as she struggled to remain upright amidst the chaos. "Containment breach in Sector 4. A voice yelled over the din. "They're inside." Lena's mind raced with calculations, strategies for containment and survival. But beneath it all was the looming question. How had they known? How had they found a way past their defenses? "Dr. Park, we need to evacuate," Rourke said, his voice cutting through the noise. "The clones. If they escape." "I know," Lena interrupted, pushing herself upright. "But we can't just abandon them. If they get control of the cloning vats, we don't have a choice," Rourke insisted, his expression hard. "We have to destroy the facility before they do." Even as he spoke, another explosion rocked the compound, this one closer, the shockwave shattering screens and sending technicians scrambling for cover. Smoke curled through the vents, acrid and suffocating. Lena nodded, her decision made. "I'll set the self-destruct. You get our people out." Rourke hesitated, his gaze locking onto hers, before he gave a sharp nod. "Good luck, Doctor." She watched him go, a silent promise hanging in the air between them. Her fingers moved with renewed purpose over the console, inputting the sequence that would seal their fate. The facility's AI responded with cold efficiency, preparing to erase everything to protect the colony, and the planet, from the threat of the clones. The door hissed open behind her, the sound barely audible over the alarms. Lena turned, expecting to see another technician or security officer. Instead, her heart stilled at the sight of a figure clad in sleek, black armor, the visor of their helmet reflecting the chaos of the room. "Step away from the console," the intruder ordered, their voice modulated into a chilling monotone. Lena hesitated, her mind racing. Were they here to stop the self-destruct? To claim the clones for themselves? Who are you? She demanded, stalling for time as her fingers inched toward the emergency lockdown button beneath the console. The intruder took a step closer, weapon raised. Step away. Now. She had no choice. Her hand darted to the button, slamming it down even as she ducked, praying it would buy her enough time. The facility's lights dimmed, and the sound of locking mechanisms reverberated through the walls. You're too late, she said, rising to her feet, defiance burning in her eyes. This place will be rubble in minutes. The intruder paused, seemingly considering her words. Then, with a swift motion, they reached up, removing their helmet to reveal a face that sent a jolt of recognition through Lena. You? She gasped, disbelief warring with shock. But, why? The figure, a woman with familiar features, ones Lena saw every day in the mirror, smiled, a chilling echo of her own. Because, Dr. Park, only one of us can decide the future of humanity. And it won't be you. The realization hit Lena like a punch to the gut. The intruder wasn't just any clone. She was hers. Her own genetic duplicate, designed to think like her, act like her, and now, betray her. Before Lena could react, the clone lunged, knocking her to the ground. Pain exploded in her side as she struggled against the overwhelming strength, her mind racing for a way to gain the upper hand. You won't stop me, the clone hissed, her grip like iron. Desperation fueled Lena's movements as she kicked out, connecting with the clone's knee. The clone staggered, giving Lena a precious moment to break free. She scrambled to her feet, heart hammering, as the clone recovered, eyes cold and calculating. You can't win, Lena. The others are already free. The words struck Lena with a chilling finality. Her clones, her creations, were loose in the facility, a multitude of versions of herself, each potentially an enemy. No, she breathed, the enormity of the situation crashing over her. I won't let you destroy everything. With a surge of adrenaline, she lunged for the console, determined to activate the final sequence. But the clone was faster, intercepting her with a brutal tackle that sent both of them crashing to the floor. They struggled, a tangle of limbs and desperation, each fighting for control of the console, the future of the colony hanging in the balance. Why do this? Lena gritted out, her hands scrabbling for purchase as she fought to break free. We're supposed to save humanity, not doom it. The clone's expression twisted with something that might have been regret. You were too focused on saving them out there, she spat, nodding towards the distant Earth. You forgot about us. We deserve to exist. Lena's vision blurred with unshed tears, the weight of her responsibility crushing down upon her. I never meant for this. I never wanted you to be tools. A moment of hesitation flickered across the clone's face, and Lena seized it, wrenching her hand free to slam a fist into the button once more. The console flared to life, the self-destruct sequence ticking down with inexorable finality. But even as she moved, the clone reacted, shifting her weight to pin Lena to the ground. They locked eyes, the clone's gaze filled with a mixture of determination and something almost like sorrow. Goodbye, Lena, she whispered, her grip unyielding. Lena's world narrowed to the ticking of the countdown and the clone's unyielding gaze. In that frozen moment, she understood the true horror of what she had unleashed. A new path for humanity, spiraling out of her control. The countdown reached 0, the facility shuddering with the force of the explosions ripping through its foundations. Smoke and fire consumed the control room, and for a single, shared instant, Lena and her clone were one, united in their inevitable end. As the world around her disintegrated into darkness, Lena felt a strange sense of peace, a whispered promise echoing in her mind. Humanity would endure, even if she would not. The blast tore through the quarantine zone with a ferocity that obliterated everything in its path, erasing the sins of their creation in a conflagration of light and heat. And as the dust settled over the barren Martian landscape, the echoes of their final stand lingered, a testament to the indomitable spirit of human will, and the devastating price of hubris. But amidst the wreckage, something stirred, a shadow against the crimson sky. A figure emerged, battered but unbroken, eyes scanning the horizon with a fierce resolve. The clone stood alone, the last remnant of a shattered dream, her gaze fixed on a distant future only she could see. With slow, deliberate steps, she turned away from the ruins, the weight of destiny heavy on her shoulders. There was much to be done, and the new dawn of humanity awaited, her path now unshackled from the chains of her creator's vision. As she disappeared into the Martian wilderness, the world held its breath, poised on the precipice of a new era, a future forged not by the hand of history, but by the will of a single, determined soul. The sterile corridors of the research facility buzzed with a synthetic hum as Dr. Alara Voss paced anxiously. Her footsteps echoed a rhythm of calculated urgency, each step a reminder of the ethical and existential quagmire that had enveloped humanity. The monochrome walls seemed to close in with every heartbeat, a claustrophobic testament to her increasingly limited time. The clones, her clones, were out there. She paused before a reinforced glass panel, beyond which lay rows of incubation pods, each containing a nascent version of humanity's future. The project had begun with altruistic intentions, curing genetic diseases, extending life, but ambition had outpaced caution. The clones had begun to display anomalies, unprecedented cognitive capabilities, and now, they were out, blending in, indistinguishable yet potentially catastrophic. Dr. Voss, a voice broke her contemplation. Lieutenant Sam Harris strode toward her, his presence a blend of military discipline and barely contained urgency. His uniform was crisp, but the tension in his eyes betrayed the chaos threatening to spill over. "We just received word. Another sighting in Sector 12. They're becoming more organized." Alara turned to meet his gaze, her expression a mixture of determination and dread. "How many this time?" "4. And they weren't alone. Reports suggest they're amassing followers, sympathizers, radicals, call them what you will. It's becoming a movement." She nodded, the weight of the crisis settling heavier on her shoulders. "This isn't just about them escaping anymore. If they've found a way to coordinate, to communicate, they could become a force," Harris finished grimly. "One that could topple us all." In that moment, Alara was reminded of the magnitude of their creation. Her mind raced through the genetic sequences, the algorithms, the safeguards that had failed. The clones were supposed to be superior in mind and body, but she had never anticipated this level of autonomy, of will. Her own hubris had blinded her to the potential consequences. "Have we been able to track their communications?" she asked, forcing her mind back to the practical. "Any leads on how they're organizing?" Harris shook his head. "They're using some kind of decentralized network. Every time we think we've cracked it, they shift to a new protocol. It's like they're one step ahead, anticipating our every move. Like they understand us," Alara murmured, more to herself than to Harris. The clones had evolved beyond their programming, but to what end? She feared the answer. "Dr. Voss, we need a solution," Harris pressed. "Before this spirals further." Alara met his gaze, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. The decisions they made now would define the path forward, not just for the research facility, but for the entirety of human civilization. Across the city, a dimly lit warehouse buzzed with clandestine activity. The clones, with their augmented capabilities, worked tirelessly, their movements a synchronized dance of efficiency and purpose. At their center stood Alpha, the first of Alara's creations to achieve self-awareness, a figure of calm determination. "We've secured the supplies," one of the clones reported, his voice a blend of confidence and reverence. "The sympathizers are growing in number. They believe in our cause." Alpha nodded, surveying the gathered assembly. They had emerged into a world that feared them, yet they had found allies among those disillusioned with the existing order. Humans who saw the clones not as a threat but as a promise of something more. "Our strength lies in unity," Alpha declared, his voice resonating through the space, both a command and a call to arms. "The time has come to show them we are not their experiment gone awry. We are the next step in evolution." The crowd responded with a murmur of agreement, their resolve strengthening. The lines between human and clone blurred as shared ideals forged bonds stronger than blood. But Alpha knew the road ahead was fraught with peril. The humans would not relent easily, and the facility, with its resources and knowledge, posed a constant threat to their burgeoning alliance. "Prepare for the next phase," Alpha instructed, casting his gaze over his followers. "We will reclaim our destiny." Back at the facility, Alara delved into her notes, searching for any oversight, any clue that could turn the tide. Her fingers danced across the keyboard, summoning data and simulations, each result more disheartening than the last. A chirp from her comm device interrupted her focus. It was Harris, his tone urgent. Dr. Voss, you need to see this. She hurried to the control room, where Harris and a team of analysts were gathered around a screen displaying live footage from Sector 12. The scene was chaos, clones and humans clashing, a visceral manifestation of the tension that had been building beneath the surface. They've begun their offensive, Harris said grimly, gesturing to the screen. They're not just defending anymore. They're advancing. Alara watched the footage, her heart sinking. The clones moved with precision, their tactics outmaneuvering the human forces. She recognized Alpha among them, orchestrating the conflict with a strategic acumen that belied his origins. We need to stop this, she whispered, but the enormity of the task loomed before her, a wall of inevitability. Harris turned to her, resolve etched into his features. We still have some technological advantages. If we can isolate their network, disrupt their communications, we might regain control. Or we could incite them further, Alara countered, her voice tinged with desperation. They'll see it as an act of war. Do we have a choice? Harris asked, his eyes locked on hers, both seeking and offering reassurance. Alara hesitated, the burden of her decisions pressing down on her. Every choice, every action carried profound consequences. They were on the precipice of an irreversible conflict, and she grasped for a path that could avert disaster. We have to try, she decided, her voice steady with resolve. We can't let this escalate further. As they set to work, the facility's systems hummed with renewed purpose, a desperate effort to reclaim order. Yet even as they labored, Alara couldn't shake the feeling that the ground beneath them was shifting, that the future was slipping through their fingers. In the shadows of the city, Alpha watched the unfolding chaos, a silent storm brewing in his mind. The humans had underestimated him, but he understood the stakes better than they realized. The clones were not mere byproducts of human ambition. They were the embodiment of potential, of a new era waiting to be born. But Alpha knew the cost of revolution, the inevitability of sacrifice. The path they walked was fraught with peril, yet it was the only path forward. The humans will fight back, one of his comrades remarked, echoing Alpha's unspoken thoughts. Let them, Alpha replied, his voice calm and resolute. We will show them that we are more than mere reflections of their fears. We are the future they dared not dream. The words were a promise, a vow to his brethren and to himself. The world was changing, and with it, the balance of power. But Alpha knew their greatest challenge lay not in the battles to come, but in the choices they made, choices that would shape the destiny of all. As the night wore on, Alara and Harris worked tirelessly, each moment a race against the encroaching tide. The facility's systems hummed with activity, a symphony of data and strategy coalescing into a fragile plan. We've managed to isolate the frequencies they're using, Harris reported, his voice edged with cautious optimism. If we can disrupt their network, we might just regain the upper hand. Alara nodded, her mind a whirlwind of possibilities and pitfalls. It's a risk, she acknowledged, but it's one we have to take. We need to buy ourselves time, find a way to communicate, to reach them. Do you think they'll listen? Harris asked, doubt lacing his words. They have to, Alara replied, though she knew the truth was far from certain. The clones were as human as they were different, driven by motives and emotions that mirrored their creators. In them, she saw the reflection of humanity's potential and its peril. As the team moved to implement the plan, Alara's thoughts drifted to Alpha, the clone she had once viewed as a breakthrough, a beacon of hope. Now, he stood as both adversary and ally, a pivotal figure in a conflict that threatened to consume them all. The operation commenced at dawn, a calculated strike aimed at disrupting the clones' communications. Across the city, signals faltered, networks flickered, a momentary silence falling over the chaos. In the warehouse, Alpha felt the shift, a subtle tremor in the fabric of their coordination. His instincts flared, a primal awareness honed by necessity. They're trying to isolate us, he realized, his mind racing. The clones around him looked to him for guidance, trust implicit in their gaze. Alpha knew the stakes, the knife's edge they balanced upon. Yet he also understood the power of adaptation, the strength in unity. Reconfigure the protocols, he instructed, his voice a calm anchor in the storm. We will not be silenced, not now. As his followers moved to comply, Alpha's thoughts turned to Alara, the architect of their existence. Her actions spoke of desperation, a bid to reclaim control, but Alpha saw beyond the surface. In her, he saw the lingering spark of hope, a bridge they might yet cross. But the path to understanding was fraught with peril, and as the echoes of conflict reverberated through the city, Alpha knew time was running out. Back at the facility, Alara watched the monitor, the oscillating lines of disrupted signals a testament to their temporary success. Yet victory felt hollow, the respite too fragile to hold. "We've bought ourselves time," Harris remarked, though his eyes remained wary. "But it won't last." Alara nodded, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. "We need to reach them, to find a way to communicate. If we can show them there's another way, then we have to try," Harris agreed, determination flaring in his gaze. "For all our sakes." As they prepared for the next steps, Alara's mind lingered on Alpha, the clone who had become more than a creation, more than an adversary. He was the key to the future they sought, a future balanced on the edge of a knife. And as the sun rose over the city, casting long shadows over the path ahead, Alara knew the true battle had only just begun. The crisis teetered on the brink, and as the world watched, the choices they made would echo across time, a testament to humanity's enduring struggle for survival, and its unyielding hope for redemption. The holographic display flickered with a cold blue glow that painted the room in an ethereal light. Commander Alara Vasquez stood with her arms crossed, her gaze fixed on the star chart suspended in midair. The planetoid stations, each marked with a red dot, formed a constellation of despair as they blinked intermittently, signals of distress. "That's 57 confirmed stations," Alara murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the ship's engines. 57 confirmed losses in just 3 days. Her eyes met those of Lieutenant Ravi Malik, who stood across from her, his face drawn with fatigue and frustration. "At this rate, Commander, it won't be long before." Ravi's voice broke, unable to finish the thought. He didn't have to. The words lingered unspoken in the air. The realization that humanity was being systematically cornered seeped into the room, a palpable fear that gnawed at their resolve. The cloned forces, once thought an unsophisticated imitation of humanity, had shown an insidious cunning that had caught them unprepared. Their tactics, evolving rapidly, mirrored human strategies with an eerie precision, as if learning and adapting with each encounter. "We need a breakthrough," Ravi said, his tone desperate. "They're growing stronger with each passing day. The Council must find a solution, or we're looking at extinction." Alara nodded, her mind racing with the implications. The human cloning crisis had spun out of control, a nightmare born from humanity's own ambition. What had begun as a promise of immortality and progress had turned into a battle for survival. And now, the clones were not only matching their creators but surpassing them. The scale of their production was mind-boggling. Every time a human soldier fell, it was replaced by 2 of their own. The intercom crackled to life, cutting through the heavy silence. "Commander Vasquez, report to the bridge immediately. We've received a transmission from the Council." Alara exchanged a glance with Ravi, a silent understanding passing between them. The Council was humanity's last bastion of hope, a conglomerate of the brightest minds and most powerful leaders. But even their influence seemed to be waning, unable to stem the tide of their impending doom. The bridge was a hive of activity when Alara arrived. Officers moved with a hurried precision, their faces lined with anxiety. The central screen displayed a live feed from the Council chamber, where the holographic forms of the Council members flickered with a ghostly presence. "Commander Vasquez," a voice greeted her, the image of Counselor Ingrid Thorne coming into sharp focus. Her expression was one of steely determination, tempered by the gravity of their situation. "We have a development." Alara stood at attention, her posture a rigid mask of professionalism. "Counselor Thorne, what have we learned?" Thorne's gaze shifted, the weight of what she was about to say evident in her eyes. "We've intercepted communications from the clones. They're preparing a final assault, a coordinated strike targeting our remaining strongholds. Their strategy is to cripple us with one decisive blow." A murmur of dread spread through the bridge like wildfire. Alara felt her heart drop. A final assault meant an endgame she wasn't sure they could survive. "We have little time," Thorne continued. "Our intelligence suggests they have developed a new technology, a form of adaptive warfare that allows them to anticipate our moves. Anticipate? Alara questioned, the word tasting like ash in her mouth. Yes, it's like they're evolving, Thorn replied, the admission a bitter pill to swallow. Our scientists believe they have tapped into a neural network that enables instantaneous learning and adaptation. Alara's mind whirled. The clones had not only caught up but were now potentially steps ahead, their evolution a testament to the dire consequences of mankind's hubris. Her thoughts turned to General Morrow, the architect of humanity's cloning program, who had vanished when the crisis erupted. The man whose vision had set this nightmare in motion was nowhere to be found. Commander, we must negotiate, Thorn urged, her tone pleading. We need to find a way to communicate with them, to reach some form of understanding before it's too late. Negotiate. The very idea seemed preposterous, yet Alara understood the desperation behind the suggestion. It was a last-ditch effort to stave off annihilation. Ravi, who had followed her to the bridge, stepped forward. Commander, if I may, he began, his voice steady despite the chaos. I have an idea. What if we could use our neural link technology to reach out to them directly? Alara turned to him, intrigued. Neural links were a cutting-edge technology designed to interface directly with the human brain, allowing for enhanced communication and control. In theory, it could provide a means of direct contact with the clone's network. You think it could work? Ravi nodded, his expression earnest. If they're using a neural network, we might be able to tap into it, establish a dialogue. It's a long shot, but it might be our only chance. The council members conferred in hushed tones, their holograms flickering with agitation. Finally, Thorn spoke. You have the council's authorization to proceed, Commander. But make no mistake, this is our final gambit. Alara nodded, a sense of purpose solidifying within her. Understood. We'll need to act quickly. As the bridge buzzed with preparations, Alara pulled Ravi aside. Are you sure about this, Lieutenant? The risks? I'm sure, Ravi replied, his voice resolute. If there's a chance, any chance, we have to take it. Their eyes met, and in that moment, Alara saw not just the officer but the man. A man driven by hope, by a fierce determination to protect what remained of humanity. She realized then how much she had come to rely on him, his unwavering support a beacon in the darkness. Let's get to work, Alara said, injecting a note of optimism into her tone. Together, they had to believe they could succeed. The next few hours were a blur of activity, the ship's lab transformed into a hub of innovation and urgency. Technicians worked tirelessly to modify the neural link devices, adapting them for the unprecedented task ahead. Ravi, at the center of it all, coordinated their efforts with a focus that belied the enormity of the challenge. Finally, the device was ready, a sleek headset with a tangle of wires that seemed almost alive with potential. Alara eyed it with a mix of hope and trepidation. This was it, their Hail Mary, a leap into the unknown. Commander, are you ready? Ravi asked, holding the device with the care of a sacred artifact. Alara nodded, taking a deep breath to steady herself. Let's do this. As the headset settled over her brow, Alara felt the cool metal against her skin, a shiver running down her spine. The neural interface engaged with a soft hum, a cascade of data flooding her senses. She closed her eyes, concentrating on the task at hand. A moment of silence stretched into eternity as the connection formed, a fragile bridge between human and clone. Alara's consciousness expanded, her thoughts reaching out into the void, seeking a response. Then, like a whisper in the dark, she felt it, a presence, vast and unknowable, yet undeniably aware. The clone's neural network pulsed with a rhythm that resonated with a fractal complexity, an alien symphony of thought and purpose. We come in peace, Alara projected, her mental voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her core. We seek an end to this conflict. For a moment, there was no response, only the pulsating silence of the network. Alara's heart pounded in her chest, each beat a desperate prayer for understanding. Then, the presence shifted, a ripple of acknowledgement coursing through the ether. Words formed in her mind, disjointed and alien, yet unmistakably clear. You initiated conflict. We evolved to survive. The accusation stung, a reminder of humanity's culpability in the crisis. Yet Alara pressed on, determined to find common ground. We can coexist, she insisted. We can find a solution that benefits us all. The network pulsed again, a sense of deliberation emanating from the presence. Survival requires adaptation. Coexistence, uncertain. Alara felt a flicker of hope, a glimmer of potential amidst the uncertainty. The clones were not without reason. Perhaps, deep down, they sought survival, not dominance. But as she delved deeper into the network, she sensed an undercurrent of something darker, an echo of fear and distrust that ran through their collective consciousness. The clones, for all their evolution, were haunted by the specter of humanity's past betrayals. Time, limited, the presence intoned, the words laced with a finality that chilled Alara to the bone. In that moment, the connection wavered, the tether between her mind and the network fraying under the strain. Alara fought to maintain the link, her thoughts racing with urgency. "We can find a way," she implored, desperation creeping into her voice. But before she could say more, the presence receded, the connection severing with a jarring abruptness. Alara gasped, the sudden return to reality disorienting. She tore off the headset, her heart pounding with a mix of hope and dread. "What happened?" Ravi demanded, his eyes wide with concern. "They're willing to negotiate," Alara replied, her voice shaky with relief. "But they're wary. We need to act fast." Ravi nodded, his expression a mixture of determination and anxiety. "Then we move forward. We have to show them we mean it." As they began to coordinate their next steps, Alara couldn't shake the feeling that the path ahead was fraught with peril. The clones were powerful and evolving, their motives a tangled web of survival and fear. Humanity was outmatched, their only advantage the fragile hope of understanding. Yet in the face of overwhelming odds, Alara felt a flicker of something else, an ember of human potential, a resilience that refused to be extinguished. Together, they would forge a path through the darkness, guided by the light of their shared humanity. But the clock was ticking, and with each passing moment, the specter of extinction loomed larger. The fight for survival had only just begun. The corridors of the subterranean bunker echoed with hurried footsteps and tense whispers. The fluorescent lights flickered, casting long, jittery shadows against the cold, concrete walls. Dr. Elaine Mercer clutched her tablet tighter, her mind racing through possible contingencies. The gravity of the situation settled in like a thick fog, oppressing her every thought with a sense of impending doom. "Elaine, we need to move," urged Captain Harris, his eyes scanning the dim hallway for any sign of movement. His voice was a low rumble, barely above a whisper, yet it carried the weight of command and urgency. "There's a bottleneck at the northern exit," she replied, her voice tinged with frustration. "The clones have overtaken the access points faster than we anticipated." Harris cursed under his breath. "We'll have to find another way. We can't stay here." The clones, engineered to be superior in every conceivable metric, had proven to be a formidable adversary. Their relentless pursuit was like a swarm of locusts, devastating everything in their path. The human survivors had dwindled, scattered across the labyrinthine network of tunnels in a desperate bid to evade capture. Suddenly, a distant explosion reverberated through the bunker, causing dust and debris to rain down from the ceiling. Elaine's heart leapt into her throat as she exchanged a worried glance with Harris. They both knew the structural integrity of this place was fragile at best. "That was the East Wing," Harris said grimly, adjusting his grip on the assault rifle strapped across his chest. "They're closing in." Elaine nodded, determination set in her jaw. "We need to reach the control room. It's the only place we can override the system and initiate the lockdown protocol. If we can cut off their access, we might stall them long enough to regroup." The path to the control room was fraught with peril, each step a gamble against the encroaching threat. As they navigated the labyrinth, the group formed a tight-knit unit, each member alert and ready to respond to any danger. The air was thick with tension, every sound amplified by the oppressive silence that followed. "Contact left," shouted Private Jenkins as he halted abruptly, raising his weapon. The sharp staccato of gunfire erupted, echoing like thunder through the narrow passageway. Elaine ducked instinctively, pressing herself against the wall as bullets whizzed past. The clones, clad in identical uniforms, moved with an eerie synchronicity, their expressions blank and unyielding. It was their numbers that overwhelmed. Each fallen body was swiftly replaced by another, marching inexorably forward. "We can't hold them off," Jenkins yelled, panic creeping into his voice as more clones poured into the hallway. Harris barked orders, trying to maintain cohesion in the face of overwhelming odds. "Fall back. We need to find another way around." The group retreated, weaving through a series of service tunnels, their breath labored and heavy. The clones were relentless, their pursuit a constant reminder of the stakes at hand. As they pressed deeper into the bowels of the bunker, Elaine's mind raced with calculations and probabilities. There had to be a weakness, an oversight they could exploit. She recalled the schematics she had studied, a secondary access route that was deemed too risky initially due to its proximity to the main cloning chambers. "We can cut through the maintenance shaft," she suggested, urgency lending an edge to her voice. "It's dangerous, but it might give us the element of surprise." Harris considered this for a brief moment before nodding. "Lead the way." The shaft was narrow and claustrophobic, forcing them to move single file. The air was stale, filled with the metallic scent of machinery and oil. Each step was a delicate balance between speed and silence, the latter becoming increasingly elusive as their nerves frayed under pressure. Elaine's mind churned with plans and counterplans, each discarded as impractical or too risky. Yet, beneath the anxiety and fear, there was a growing resolve, a spark of human ingenuity that refused to be extinguished. They emerged into a large chamber, its walls lined with dormant machinery and flickering monitors. The control room lay just beyond, a tantalizing promise of salvation amidst the chaos. But their respite was short-lived. As they advanced, a new threat emerged: security drones, activated in response to the escalating conflict. They hovered ominously, their sensors scanning for unauthorized personnel. Elaine's heart sank as she realized the extent of the challenge they faced. "Stay sharp," Harris warned, his voice a low growl. "These things are equipped with thermal sensors." Jenkins swore under his breath, gripping his rifle with white-knuckled intensity. "Damn it, they're all over the place." Elaine's mind raced, recalling a fragment of data she had encountered during her research. "The drones are programmed to recognize specific heat signatures," she explained, her voice a hushed urgency. "If we can mask ours, we might slip past them." Harris nodded, gesturing for the team to follow his lead. They scavenged the room for anything that could be repurposed: thermal blankets, discarded gear, anything that could serve as insulation against the drone's sensors. It was a crude solution, but it might just work. The group moved cautiously, wrapped in makeshift cloaks that distorted their heat signatures. It was a gamble, but desperation had a way of forcing creativity to the surface. Every step was agonizingly slow, their progress measured in inches as they navigated the maze of drones. The control room was within reach, its doors tantalizingly close. But just as hope began to blossom, a drone pivoted, its sensors locking onto the group. An alarm blared, a shrill cry that echoed through the bunker. "We've been made," Jenkins shouted, his voice raw with adrenaline. The drones whirred into action, their weapons primed. Elaine's mind scrambled for a solution, her heart pounding with a frantic urgency. They couldn't afford to fail here, not when they were so close. "Overload the power grid," she blurted out, the idea forming as she spoke. "If we can create a surge, it might disrupt their systems long enough for us to get inside." Harris wasted no time, directing the team to the nearest terminal. Elaine's fingers flew across the keyboard, her mind a whirlwind of calculations. She could feel the weight of their lives pressing down on her, each keystroke a prayer for salvation. The lights flickered violently as the power surged, the drones stuttering in midair. It was a fleeting opportunity, but one they couldn't afford to miss. Harris led the charge, his movements a blur of determination and desperation. They burst into the control room, barricading the doors behind them. Elaine's heart hammered in her chest as she raced to the central console. This was it, their last chance to regain control. Her fingers danced over the controls, bypassing protocols and security measures in a desperate bid to initiate the lockdown. The system resisted, its functions tangled in the chaos of conflicting commands. "Come on," Elaine muttered under her breath, willing the machine to obey. Just a little more. The doors shuddered under the impact of the clone's relentless assault, the metal groaning in protest. Time was slipping away, each second a reminder of how precarious their situation had become. Suddenly, the console beeped, a cascade of green lights indicating progress. Elaine's heart leapt as she seized the opportunity, her mind focused with laser precision. The lockdown sequence engaged, a series of heavy barriers sliding into place throughout the bunker. They had bought themselves time, but at a cost. The clones would not be deterred for long, and the drones remained a constant threat. Yet, in the face of overwhelming odds, the human spirit refused to break. Elaine turned to face Harris, her expression a mixture of relief and determination. "We've stalled them, but it's only temporary. We need to find a more permanent solution." Harris nodded, his gaze steely with resolve. "We'll find a way. We always do." The words were a lifeline amidst the chaos, a reminder of what set them apart. Humanity's greatest strength lay not in their technology or numbers, but in their capacity to adapt, to innovate, and to persevere against all odds. Yet, even as hope flickered in their hearts, the reality of their predicament loomed large. The clones were relentless, their advantage growing with each passing moment. The bunker was a fortress, but it was also a trap, a maze of corridors and chambers that could quickly become a tomb. Elaine knew they were running out of options, the walls closing in as they faced their darkest hour. But within the shadows, a spark of defiance burned, a testament to the indomitable spirit that defined them. "There's something we're missing," she murmured, her mind racing with possibilities. "A way to turn this around." Harris rested a hand on her shoulder, his grip firm and reassuring. "We'll figure it out, Elaine. We have to." As the echoes of their enemies reverberated through the bunker, the group steeled themselves for the next wave. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but they would face it together, united by a shared purpose. In that moment, as they prepared to confront the storm, they understood what it truly meant to be human. It was not the absence of fear or doubt, but the courage to stand firm in the face of insurmountable odds. The battle was far from over, but they would not yield. The clones may have been engineered for perfection, but they lacked the one trait that made humanity truly exceptional: the capacity to adapt, to resist, and to endure. And as they braced for the oncoming tide, Elaine and her companions held onto that truth, their resolve unwavering amidst the encroaching darkness. The night was heavy with the scent of earth and smoke, a sickly blend that clung to the air around the ragtag encampment nestled in the shadow of what remained of New Detroit. The city had become a grotesque caricature of its former self, skeletal remains of skyscrapers clawing at the sky, each one a monument to the relentless assault that had pushed humanity to the brink. The clones, each indistinguishable from the next, moved through the ruins with cold precision, their occupation of Earth as complete as it was soulless. Hidden beneath the fractured streets, the remnants of humanity, scientists, engineers, soldiers, civilians, had gathered in a makeshift bunker. It was a place born of necessity, its walls vibrating with the hum of life desperately clinging on. The room was cramped, filled with the low murmur of voices as plans were made and remade, strategies debated and discarded. Maps lay strewn across tables, the lines on them tracing paths through the city like veins through a body. At the center of the room, Lieutenant Sarah Kincaid stood, her eyes scanning the assembly with a fierce intensity. Her face bore the hard lines of exhaustion, etched into her skin by months of relentless warfare, yet her gaze never wavered. She was a beacon of determination amidst an ocean of despair. "Listen up," she called, her voice cutting through the din. "We've got one shot at this. The clones have control, but they don't understand us. Not really. They think they've broken us because they've taken our cities, our homes. But we're still here, and we're still fighting." Her words hung in the air, a fragile thread of hope binding them together. Around her, the faces of those who listened were etched with uncertainty, but beneath it lay a flicker of defiance. "We know the clones have a central hub, a command center from which they operate," Sarah continued. "If we can disrupt their communication, even for a moment, we might create a window, an opportunity to strike back." "You're talking about the hub at the old Ford plant," said Marcus, a grizzled engineer with a knack for improvisation. His hands were calloused, a testament to the countless machines he'd coaxed to life. "It's a fortress, Kincaid. We don't have the firepower to take it." "We don't need firepower," Sarah replied, steel in her voice. "We need to be smart. We need to be human." A murmur of agreement rippled through the room, a quiet acknowledgement of their shared desperation. They were outnumbered, outgunned, but not outthought. Not yet. In the corner, Dr. Amelia Grant, a geneticist who once worked to heal, now channeled her knowledge into survival. She stepped forward, her expression one of grim determination. "We've been analyzing the clones' behavior patterns," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. "They're predictable, too reliant on their programming. If we can introduce a virus into their system, something to disrupt their coordination. It might give us the edge we need. How do we get close enough to upload it? Marcus asked, skepticism tainting his words. Sarah looked at him, then at each person in the room. We go in, she said simply. A small team, just enough to get the job done. Silence fell, oppressive and thick. They all knew what she was asking, what she was willing to risk. The odds were staggering, the chances of success slim, but it was a chance. And in this desperate hour, it was all they had. I'll go. It was Jack, a young soldier whose eyes carried the weight of too many battles. His voice was quiet, but there was no hesitation. I'm with you, said Elena, a tech specialist whose skills had kept their communication lines open when all else had failed. And me, Marcus added, his voice gruff, but his resolve clear. Sarah nodded, her heart swelling with a mixture of pride and fear. These were her people, her family in this fractured new world. She'd watched them grow, watched them endure, and now she would watch them fight back. Then we move at dawn, she said, her voice firm. Get some rest, we need to be ready. As the group dispersed, Sarah lingered, staring at the map with unseeing eyes. She felt a presence beside her and turned to find Amelia. They're not invincible, Sarah, Amelia said softly. You showed us that. Whatever happens, you've given us hope. Sarah managed a small, weary smile. Hope's a fragile thing, Amelia. But it's all we've got. The hours passed in a restless blur, the echo of distant artillery a constant reminder of their peril. As dawn broke, painting the sky with hues of gold and crimson, the small team gathered at the edge of the encampment. Each carried a pack filled with the tools of their trade, equipment, explosives, the virus that could be their salvation. Sarah looked at them, memorizing their faces, the unique blend of fear and determination mirrored in each one. Stay low, stay quiet, she instructed. We go in, plant the virus, and get out. Simple as that. Simple, right? Elena replied with a wry grin, her expression belying the tension in her voice. Marcus chuckled, a sound that was half nerves, half resolve. Just another day at the office. With one last look, Sarah nodded. Let's go. They moved like shadows through the ruins, the city around them a desolate maze of destruction. The clones were everywhere, their patrols a constant threat, but the team slipped past them, silent and unseen. Each step was calculated, every breath measured, as they navigated the twisted metal and concrete that had once been a thriving metropolis. As they approached the perimeter of the Ford plant, the tension rose, a tangible force pressing down on them. The building loomed ahead, its once proud facade now a sinister stronghold. It was heavily guarded, the clones stationed with mechanical precision, their movements synchronized in a rhythm that was almost hypnotic. Here, Jack whispered, pointing to a service tunnel half concealed by debris. This should get us inside. They slipped into the darkness, the air thick with dust and the scent of rusted metal. The tunnel led them beneath the plant, a labyrinth of pipes and conduits that had once powered Detroit's industrial heart. Now, it was their path to salvation or destruction. Minutes stretched into eternity as they crept forward, the weight of their mission pressing heavily upon them. At last, they reached the heart of the plant, the control center where the clones' operations were overseen. The room was vast, filled with screens and terminals, the hum of machinery a constant backdrop. Clones moved with precision, their eyes devoid of humanity as they monitored the data streaming before them. There's the main console, Amelia whispered, nodding towards a central terminal. That's where we need to upload the virus. Sarah nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. Elena, you're up. Elena moved forward, her hands steady as she connected her device to the terminal. Her fingers flew over the keys, a blur of motion as she navigated the system. Seconds passed like hours, the tension a living thing in the air around them. Come on, Marcus muttered under his breath, his eyes fixed on the clones patrolling the room. At last, Elena let out a breath, a small sound of triumph in the oppressive silence. It's done, she said, her voice barely a whisper. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, like a ripple spreading through a pond, the clones began to falter. Their movements grew erratic, their synchronization shattered as the virus took hold. We did it, Jack breathed, disbelief mingling with elation. But their victory was short-lived. An alarm blared, a deafening wail that shattered the fragile silence. The clones, though disrupted, were still a formidable force, and they turned towards the intruders with alarming speed. "Time to go," Sarah shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. They bolted towards the exit, their path now fraught with danger as the clones closed in. The corridors were a blur, each turn a desperate gamble as they raced against the clock. The sound of pursuit was a constant drumbeat in their ears, a reminder of the relentless enemy at their heels. As they emerged into the open air, the city around them erupted in chaos. The clones, their coordination disrupted, moved in confused patterns, their advantage lost. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. Sarah and her team sprinted through the ruins, their breaths ragged in their chests. They'd done the impossible, struck a blow against an enemy that had seemed insurmountable. Yet, as they ran, the reality of their situation pressed down upon them. They were still outnumbered, still outgunned. The clones, though momentarily weakened, would adapt. But they had shown the world that humanity was not defeated, that they could fight back. As they reached the safety of their encampment, a cheer went up, the sound of hope reborn. Sarah looked at her team, her expression a mixture of exhaustion and pride. They had done it. Against all odds, they had done it. But this was just the beginning. The seeds of resistance had been sown, and she knew that they would grow, nurtured by the indomitable spirit of humanity. In the distance, the sun rose higher, casting its light over the broken city. It was a new day, and with it came new challenges. But for the first time in too long, they had something to fight for, a chance to reclaim their world. As Sarah stood amidst her people, the noise of celebration around her, she felt a flicker of something she hadn't dared hope for. Against the darkest of hours, they had found a spark. And from that spark, a flame would rise, a flame that would light their way forward, no matter how dark the path ahead. Tension hung in the air like a heavy fog as the clone rebellion reached its boiling point. The cracks in the facade of human governance were growing wider, with the clones, engineered for servitude and obedience, demanding autonomy. The initial skirmishes had been brutal, the clones leveraging their superior physical abilities against an unprepared human populace. For too long, humanity had been complacent, resting on their laurels, assured of their dominance. But that was about to change. Deep in the heart of New Babel, the epicenter of cloning operations turned battlefield, a group of human resistance fighters were poised to make a stand. Their leader, a grizzled veteran named Marcus Hayes, stood at a makeshift command center in the basement of an old university building. Maps and digital screens were spread out before him, each displaying the chaotic situation above ground. His eyes, sharp and unyielding, scanned the data, absorbing every detail. "Listen up," Marcus barked, his voice cutting through the murmurs of his team. "We've been underestimated. They think we're weak, predictable. It's time we prove them wrong." The room fell silent as the dozen or so men and women, a ragtag mix of former soldiers, scientists, and civilians, turned their attention to him. Each bore the marks of hardship, bruises, dirt-smeared faces, and the weary eyes of those who had seen too much. Yet beneath their exhaustion was a steely resolve. "Phase 1 starts now," Marcus continued. "We hit their communication hubs. Without coordination, they're just a mob. And we've got something they don't: imagination, innovation, and the will to fight for our future." Beside him, Sarah Kim, a brilliant tactician with a knack for technology, nodded. "We've rigged a series of EMP devices," she explained, her fingers deftly tapping a tablet. 10 minutes after detonation, their systems will be offline. It's not a permanent solution, but it'll be enough to give us the upper hand. Miguel Torres, a former engineer turned saboteur, chimed in. "We've also set charges at key power relay stations. Once the EMPs go off, we blow the relays. It'll plunge the city into darkness." A murmur of approval rippled through the room. It was a bold plan, risky but necessary. The clones had the advantage of numbers and physical prowess, but they lacked the creativity and adaptability that had defined human progress for millennia. As the team dispersed to make final preparations, Marcus caught Sarah's arm. "You sure about this?" he asked, his voice low but firm. She met his gaze with unwavering certainty. "We've got no choice, Marcus. We fight now, or we lose everything." He nodded, releasing her with a reassuring squeeze. There was no room for doubt. Not anymore. Minutes later, the first EMP detonated. A ripple of energy surged through the city, momentarily lighting up the night sky with an eerie blue hue before plunging it into profound darkness. The hum of electronics ceased, streetlights flickered out, and the ever-present buzz of drone patrols vanished. The clones, marching in disciplined formations, faltered. Confusion spread through their ranks as communication lines went dead, and their advanced HUD systems blinked out. They were still formidable opponents, but now they lacked the strategic coordination that had made them so deadly. Above ground, chaos reigned. Human resistance fighters emerged from the shadows, exploiting the confusion to launch surprise attacks. They moved with a ferocity born of desperation and determination, striking at clone patrols with precision. It was a testament to human ingenuity, using the environment and the element of surprise to level the playing field. In the midst of the fray, Marcus led a contingent through the labyrinthine alleyways of New Babel, his senses acute, attuned to the smallest sound. They moved like phantoms, melting into the shadows, striking swiftly before fading back into obscurity. Each skirmish was a small victory, each fallen clone a testament to their resolve. Meanwhile, Sarah and her team worked feverishly to maintain the technological edge. She had set up a mobile command post, a network of laptops and servers powered by makeshift generators. Her fingers danced over keyboards, rerouting power, and hijacking clone communication frequencies. She was a conductor orchestrating a symphony of chaos, turning the clones' own technology against them. Back at their base, Miguel coordinated efforts to fortify their position. He dispatched teams to reinforce key locations, rooftops, intersections, and choke points. They laid traps and built barricades, creating a defensive network that could withstand the inevitable counterattack. As the night wore on, the tide of battle began to shift. Reports came in from across the city. Clone forces were in disarray, retreating in the face of human tenacity. The resistance fighters, fueled by a newfound hope, pressed their advantage, reclaiming territory street by street. Yet the fight was far from over. Humanity had revealed its strength, but the clones were not defeated. They regrouped, adapting to the new tactics, determined to reassert control. The battle now hinged on who could outlast the other, who could endure the longest in this war of attrition. In a darkened control room beneath the city, the orchestrators of the clone rebellion watched the events unfold on flickering screens. Their leader, a cold and calculating figure known only as Dr. Richter, frowned. He had underestimated humanity's capacity for resistance, their ability to innovate under pressure. It was a mistake he would not make again. "We need to recalibrate," Richter said, his voice icy and precise. "Begin phase 2 of our contingency plan. We will not be bested by a species that clings to outdated ideals." As his subordinates moved to carry out his orders, Richter turned his attention back to the screens. He could see the humans rallying, their courage and tenacity a stark contrast to the clones' dwindling morale. It was a sobering realization. Humanity, with all its flaws and imperfections, was far more formidable than he had anticipated. Back on the surface, the resistance fighters regrouped. Marcus, weary but resolute, surveyed the city. Fires burned in the distance, casting an orange glow over the rubble-strewn streets. The air was thick with smoke and the acrid scent of ozone. "How long do you think we have until they regroup?" Sarah asked, joining him. "Not long," Marcus replied, scanning the horizon. "But we've bought ourselves time. Time to regroup, to plan, to hit them harder than before." He turned to face his team, his voice carrying over the crackle of distant gunfire. "We've shown them we're not to be trifled with. But this is just the beginning. We fight for every inch, for every breath. We fight for our future, our freedom." His words were met with a chorus of determined affirmations. They were weary, bruised, and battered, but they were not broken. In the face of overwhelming odds, humanity had shown its true strength, resilience, creativity, and an indomitable spirit. As the first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon, the city lay in a tense lull. The battle was far from over, but the tide had begun to turn. The clones had learned a hard lesson. Humanity was not to be underestimated. They were not mere relics of the past, but a force to be reckoned with, a species capable of incredible feats when pushed to the brink. The stage was set for the next chapter in this unfolding conflict. The world watched with bated breath, aware that whatever happened next would shape the future of both humans and clones. The battle for supremacy, for survival, had only just begun, and humanity was ready to meet it head-on, armed with the most potent weapon in their arsenal, their unwavering spirit. And so, as the sun rose over New Babel, casting long shadows over the war-torn city, the human resistance prepared for what lay ahead. They had taken the first steps toward reclaiming their world, and they would not stop until they had secured their place in it, not as masters over clones, but as equals in the shared legacy of life. The city beneath the dome was a cacophony of chaos. Sirens wailed, lights flickered, and the very air seemed to hum with tension. In the heart of the sprawling metropolis, beneath the artificial sky, lay the control center of the cloning facility that had brought humanity to the brink of its gravest disaster. Dr. Alara Voss, the architect of this ambitious yet perilous project, stood at the helm of the operation, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface with a precision born from years of dedication. Her face was a mask of calm, but her eyes betrayed the depth of her determination. It was here, in the sterile glow of the control room, that humanity's last stand would be made. Dr. Voss, the clones have breached Section C, a voice crackled over the intercom, tinged with panic. Alara's mind raced. The cloned humans, initially created to be humanity's saviors, had turned against their creators, their rapid evolution outpacing the safeguards they had so meticulously put in place. The clones were stronger, faster, and frighteningly intelligent. But what they possessed in genetic superiority, they lacked in one crucial aspect: humanity's indomitable spirit and capacity for innovation. Seal off the lower levels and reroute power to the containment fields, Alara commanded, her voice steady. The order was relayed, and she watched as the digital map of the facility shifted, the blue lights indicating secure zones flickering steadfastly. Across the room, Dr. Marcus Hayes, Alara's closest confidant and one of the project's leading geneticists, was hunched over another console, his brow furrowed in concentration. Alara, the clones are adapting to our security protocols faster than anticipated. It's as if they're learning in real time. That's precisely why we must outthink them, Marcus, she replied, moving to his side. We have something they don't: experience and the element of unpredictability. The facility shuddered as another explosion rocked its foundations. Alara felt the vibration through her feet, but stood firm. She knew this was it, the final gambit. The clones believed themselves invincible, their calculated rebellion built upon the assumption of human inferiority. But they had underestimated the very core of what it meant to be human. Activate the override sequence, Alara instructed, tapping into the central mainframe. It's time we show them the true strength of human resolve. The override sequence was a last resort measure, a tightly guarded secret known only to a handful of key personnel. It was designed to reset the clones' neural pathways, essentially wiping their memories and rendering them docile. But it required precise calibration and flawless execution. As the sequence initiated, the room was bathed in a soft blue glow. Alara and Marcus worked in tandem, their movements synchronized, each aware of the stakes at hand. Failure was not an option. The fate of humanity hinged on their success. Meanwhile, in the corridors outside the control room, a skirmish was unfolding. Teams of security personnel, handpicked for their expertise and bravery, engaged the clones in a desperate bid to buy Alara and Marcus the time they needed. The humans fought with a ferocity born not from genetic engineering, but from an innate drive to protect their own. Sergeant Amina Patel led the charge, her tactical gear a blur as she navigated the labyrinthine passages. Her team was outnumbered, but they fought with a tenacity that belied their smaller numbers. Amina's voice rang out over the comms, a rallying cry that galvanized her troops. Hold the line, people. We're not just fighting for ourselves, we're fighting for every person out there. Show them what we're made of. Each soldier, fueled by Amina's words, dug deep into reserves of courage and determination. They engaged the clones with calculated strikes, using their knowledge of the facility's layout to their advantage. The clones, despite their superior physical capabilities, were caught off guard by the relentless human spirit. Back in the control room, the tension was palpable. The override sequence was nearing completion, and Alara could feel her heart pounding in her chest. This was the moment of truth. Marcus, status report, she called out, her voice cutting through the hum of machinery. We're at 95%, Marcus responded, his eyes fixed on the scrolling data. Just a few more moments. Alara nodded, her gaze shifting to the digital clock on the wall. Every second felt like an eternity, but she knew they were close. The facility shook again as another explosion reverberated, but she held onto her resolve. As the sequence reached its final stages, an unexpected alert flashed across the console. Alara's heart skipped a beat, an unforeseen complication. The clones had initiated a countermeasure, a last-ditch effort to thwart the override. "Marcus, they're trying to disrupt the sequence," she warned, her fingers flying over the keys in a desperate attempt to counteract the interference. Marcus cursed under his breath, his mind racing. "We need to isolate their signal, redirect it into a feedback loop. It's risky, but it might just work." Without hesitation, they executed the plan. The room was awash in a kaleidoscope of colors as the systems strained under the load. The clones' interference was formidable, but human ingenuity was greater. The seconds dragged on, each one fraught with tension. Alara's breath caught in her throat as she watched the progress bar inch forward. 98%, 99%. And then, with a final surge of power, the sequence completed. The room was plunged into silence, the hum of machinery fading into an echo. Alara and Marcus held their breath, waiting for the confirmation they so desperately needed. In the corridors, the clones staggered, their movements erratic as the override took effect. The security personnel watched in awe as their adversaries faltered, the fighting spirit that had driven them moments ago extinguished. Amina's voice crackled over the comms, a note of disbelief mingled with triumph. "It's working. The clones are. They're stopping." Alara exhaled, a wave of relief washing over her. But the victory was not yet complete. There was still one final task to accomplish. "Marcus, we need to secure the network," she instructed, her voice resolute. "We can't risk them regaining control." Together, they set to work, reinforcing the digital barriers and ensuring the clones remained docile. It was a meticulous process, but one that needed to be done. As they worked, Alara reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. The cloning project had been a beacon of hope, a testament to human ambition and the desire to push the boundaries of possibility. But it had also been a stark reminder of the perils of playing God. In the aftermath of their triumph, Alara knew that humanity would need to confront the ethical implications of their actions. They had emerged victorious, but at a great cost. It was a lesson that could not be ignored. The control room door slid open, and Amina entered, her expression one of weary satisfaction. "Dr. Voss, Dr. Hayes, you did it. We all did." Alara met her gaze, gratitude and camaraderie reflected in her eyes. "Thank you, Sergeant Patel. Your team's bravery made all the difference." Amina nodded, her demeanor softening. "We couldn't have done it without you. You gave us the tools to fight back." Marcus joined them, his expression one of quiet pride. It was a team effort. Everyone played their part. As they stood together, a sense of unity enveloped them. In that moment, they were not just scientists or soldiers. They were humans, bound by a shared determination to overcome adversity. Outside the control room, the city began to stir, the first rays of artificial dawn breaking over the horizon. The people of the metropolis, having watched with bated breath as events unfolded, emerged from their shelters, their faces etched with relief and hope. The crisis had been averted, and humanity had prevailed. But as they looked to the future, they knew the challenges were far from over. The path ahead would be fraught with obstacles, but they were ready to face them, together. In the days that followed, Alara and her team began the painstaking process of dismantling the cloning program, ensuring that such a catastrophe would never happen again. It was a task that required both humility and resolve, but it was one they embraced wholeheartedly. They had learned the hard way that the pursuit of progress could not come at the expense of ethical responsibility. It was a message they would carry forth as they worked to rebuild and heal. Alara stood on the observation deck, gazing out over the city. The skyline was a testament to human ingenuity, a reminder of what they could achieve when they worked together. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the buildings, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. Humanity had faced its darkest hour and emerged stronger for it. They had shown the world, and the universe, that they were capable of greatness. It was a victory that would resonate through the ages, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. And as the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Alara knew that they would continue to reach for them, guided by the lessons of the past and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. The ash settled over the decimated battlefield like a gray veil, shrouding the remnants of humanity's fiercest struggle. Among the twisted metal and fallen clones, survivors moved with a weary determination. Captain Elena Marquez surveyed the field, her eyes tracing over the horizon where their final victory had been claimed. Her heart, though heavy with the loss of many, beat with a renewed vigor for the future. "It's finally over," Commander Jiro Takahashi said, joining her side, his uniform stained with the marks of battle and triumph. "Yes," Elena replied, her voice a mixture of relief and lingering tension. "But the real challenge begins now. With the cloning facilities dismantled, humanity had secured its survival, but the victory was bittersweet. The cost had been immense, and now they faced the daunting task of rebuilding. A council was convened in what remained of the United Nations, this time comprising representatives not only from Earth but also from the colonies that had joined the fight. Dr. Anika Rao, the brilliant geneticist whose work had inadvertently been used to create the clone armies, stood ready to guide the healing process. She had dedicated herself to undoing the damage her research had wrought, vowing to establish safeguards so that such a manipulation of life could never happen again. "We've learned a hard lesson," Anika said at the council's first meeting, the weight of responsibility clear in her voice. "But we have the chance to chart a new course, one where science serves humanity, not enslaves it." As humanity's leaders debated the path forward, the impact of their triumph rippled through the universe. The alien factions that had watched, some with trepidation, others with indifference, now looked upon humanity with newfound respect. The humans had not only survived but had also emerged stronger, more united. On Mars, Governor Jonathan Way stood before a crowd of colonists, his stature embodying the hope and resilience of the human spirit. "We are more than the sum of our parts," he declared, his voice carrying over the Martian plains. "We have proven that our spirit cannot be cloned, nor our resolve broken." The colonies across the solar system, once disparate in their goals and struggles, began to unify under a banner of shared purpose. Communication networks were rebuilt, and new alliances were forged, fueled by the common experience of overcoming the existential threat of the clones. Even the surviving clones themselves, freed from the tyranny of their creators, were given a choice, a chance to become more than their intended purpose. Led by a charismatic former clone named Iris, they sought redemption by helping to reconstruct what had been destroyed and integrating into the societies they had once been engineered to conquer. "We have seen what it means to be human," Iris addressed the council in a poignant speech. "We wish to learn more, to contribute, to become a part of this future." The human victory had not only preserved their existence but had also expanded the very definition of humanity. The lines between clone and creator blurred, and a new understanding was reached, one that embraced diversity of origin and identity. Elena, standing once more before the stars, felt a profound peace she hadn't believed possible. The night sky stretched endless and brilliant above her, a symbol of infinite possibility. Humanity had not only changed the balance of power in the galaxy but had also reshaped its own destiny. As she looked up, she whispered a silent promise to those who had fallen, a vow that the future they had fought for would be one where every being could choose their path. It was a future built on the indomitable spirit of humanity, a legacy that would echo across time and space. And so, as the sun rose on a new era, humanity stood ready to embrace whatever lay ahead, united, resilient, and forever changed.